Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a panoramic head for a tripod. When I first got into panoramic photography, wasn't able to get a professional one like this, so I made my own. And the results were really good. So what I want to show you is how to make a panoramic head tripod mount with stuff you can get from any local hardware store. And all these materials here cost about $10–15. So what you need is an 8-inch L bracket, another connecting plate. This one's 12 inches. We're not going to need it this long, so we'll be cutting this down, and we'll be cutting part of this down as well. You need a bubble level, one of these circular ones, which I also got at the hardware store, one of the big box stores. That was less than $3. Just some hardware, 3/8 bolts. This one's 1 inch, this is 1.5 inches. A couple of nylon stop nuts, 3/8 nylon stop nuts, a few washers, and then this is a 1/2 inch nut that we'll be using as a spacer. And also these are thumb screws. These thumb screws will be used to attach the camera to the mounting plate. So this is 1/4 inch thread. Now all the tripod adapters for cameras are 1/4 inch thread, so you need some type of thumb screw as well. And again, all stuff you can get at the local hardware store, the big box store, for between $10 and $15. What you're also going to need is a quick release mounting plate. Whichever one you're using should work pretty well. Now these usually have a gap at the bottom. Most of the ones I have all seem to work the same. So what you have to do is, here's an original one, which has that's how it normally comes, with the 1/4 inch thread attached to your tripod mount. You have to remove that by removing the retaining clip there. So then you'll have if you have an extra one, it's great. Some people have 2 of these, but if not, you can use your original one. Just keep your C-clip so you can put your original mounting screw back in there if you need it. But what you're going to do is remove the 1/4 inch one that was already in there, and take your 3/8 inch bolt and stick that through there. The reason I chose that is because it just seems to be the best size to fit through these mounting plate holes. So that's going to be one of the first steps. Ultimately it's going to look something like this. And this will be cut down to the proper length. You'll be able to pivot it up and down. And then we're going to find all our proper points here. I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. Again, when I first started, I did not have the money to get the professional panoramic head, so I made this bracket, and the results were really excellent. And when I got the panoramic head, I thought they would be much better, but they really weren't, because this one came out so well. So with the photo stitching software, PT-GUI preferably, there's a lot of tolerance. It really is able to stitch photos together that aren't with an exact parallax point, but you should be able to get your exact parallax point with this method either way. So I'm going to start just by drilling a couple 3/8 inch holes, one right here, and then another one on the end here. Now the one we drill here is not going to be a permanent one. We're just going to use it to set up the proper hole that we have to drill over here. So let me start by doing that. I'm just going to go ahead and drill the 3/8 inch hole here and here. I'm going to put that together, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I went ahead and got those holes drilled out. I forgot to mention that you had to drill a hole on each side, 3/8 inch hole on each side of the L bracket. And I also forgot to mention, the holes that are already here are 5/16. So these just have to be drilled out to 3/8, which is pretty easy to drill. If you have a drill press, it's a little easier to do this, but you can easily do it with a hand drill as well. So again, that's why we're not using that as existing holes, because we're using the 3/8 bolts, and we wouldn't fit through this one, obviously. So I went ahead and did that, as well as one on the end here. So now what you do is you take your quick release plate and your 1-inch bolt. I'm going to put a washer on the bottom and then you're going to stick this through either side. Doesn't really matter. This is, one of these holes is temporary, one is permanent, but the one on top is going to be permanent. This one is going to be temporary for now. So you got your washer there on the bottom. Put another washer here, and then your stop nut. So look at that. Now the reason we're using a stop nut, a nylon stop nut, and this is important, instead of just a regular nut with a lock washer, is because this will be able, you'll be able to get your correct tension friction, where this is still going to be able to rotate and it's not going to come loose when you're turning it around, whereas if you're just using a nut and a lock washer, you would run into problems with that. Just get this little snug for now. Okay. Now you're also going to do the same thing right here. Now this is where we're going to be using the spacer as well. It's going to kind of go something like this. Okay, I'm going to put the washers. I'm going to be using the 1/2-inch nut as a spacer. I'm going to put a washer on first, just like we did before. Washer on each side. It's just going to make it pivot, swivel a little bit better. And just kind of like that. Put your stop nut on there. Just get that tightened up. Okay. Now this, again, with the stop nut, you're going to be able to adjust this to the proper tension where it's just going to be based on friction, and you'll be able to pivot it up and down based on that. That's why the stop nut's good. It's right there. It's going to be able to hold itself in place even with the camera, even with a heavier camera. But I'll probably even tighten this up a little bit more, because you want this one pretty tight. You're not going to be moving it that much. Kind of the way it is right there. You see that's nice and sturdy. And again, we'll be cutting this down to the proper length, as well as cutting this shorter. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount this up on a tripod, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, as you see here, I got it mounted up to the tripod. So basically, okay, so you got your quick release plate, nice and tight in there, and that's basically how it's going to pivot. And again, you can adjust this tension here, and you probably make it a little bit tighter, but basically it's all going to be manual anyway. So that's your nice pivot point. Then you'll be placing your bubble level over here at the end, and just make sure your quick release is, your tripod head is nice and tight here. This is a ball head, so get that nice and tight. So now what we got to do now is see how this pivots up and down nicely, and again you'll be able to adjust that tension with your stop nut. So we need to attach the camera. Now, right now this is going to be a temporary placement. Most cameras, most lenses will sit at the right front of your nodal point, which is going to be about here. So for now, we're just going to mount it back here using one of these existing holes. And to do that, you're going to use your thumb screw. So you're going to stick that through, and you're also going to need some type of spacer. I had an old mounting plate from another tripod head, so you need some type of spacer here. You don't necessarily have to use this. You can use some type of washers or nuts or something like that. And then your camera's going to screw on. Backwards. The camera's going to screw on like that. Now, if there's too much of the bolt sticking out here, it's going to go too far into the camera. You don't want that. So you're going to have to put some type of washer to space it out. So in this case, I will actually put a washer on this side. Go ahead and mount the camera up. Again, this hole is just temporary for the next step, which we're going to be finding our center point. Right there, you see, it's basically how it's going to be used. But now we just got to find all our correct points. So the next step is going to be to point the camera directly up, look through the viewfinder, and find our exact center point from where it's facing down here. And then what we'll do is we'll mark it with a marker and drill exactly there. Now this is a critical point, so because you're not going to be drilling through one of these existing holes here. So you're going to have to start this hole from scratch. So it's pretty easy as you're looking through the viewfinder to find that center point, because most viewfinders have the center dot right in the middle. And as you're looking through it, just take a marker, carefully do it. Just be precise about that, and then go about drilling that hole. Now that hole is going to be a 3/8 hole, the same as this. So you might want to start it with a small drill bit and work your way up. That'll be a little bit easier to drill at. So for now, right now I'm going to go ahead and do that. Look through the viewfinder, get my center point here, and drill this hole here, this 3/8 inch hole. And then, since it'll be probably about there, we'll be able to cut some of this off over here, but not too much, because you want to leave some over here where you're going to be placing your bubble level. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I went ahead and drilled that 3/8 hole, and now we got our exact center point, and I also went ahead and cut some off the end here, because that's unnecessary. So now, basically on the end, you'll just use your bubble level. And when you're ready to shoot, you'll adjust that by your tripod head. So you'll get that nice and level. Don't really need that right now, but that's basically what the bubble level will do. You can, I guess, tape that on there somehow if you want, but you really don't have to. You just kind of carry that with you. So there you go. So now we'll be mounting our camera, and this is the critical point. So basically we got to find our sweet spot where our lens is supposed to be back and forth this way. Now on a lot of lenses you can find information on to exactly where that correct point is. Sometimes it's to this gold line here, sometimes it's out a little bit more, but there are a lot of tests you can run yourself to find that parallax point or no parallax point. So basically I'm going to provide a link as to a tutorial as to how to show that, which is pretty straightforward. It's like a 3-minute video. It's an excellent video. It shows you how to do that. But basically, you're going to have to find where this is going to mount here, and your next hole that you're going to have to drill is obviously going to mount up with your camera's tripod hole here. So basically, it's going to fall somewhere around here. So this is going to be, you're going to have to mark this somehow. You might have to draw a line here, or even put a marker so you know where your center hole is. But you might have to do this a couple times. You might get this wrong the first time. And that's also why I didn't cut this here, because if this is a little bit off, you can actually flip this around, try it again, and then if you mess it up again, you might have to buy another bracket here. So it might take a few tries to get your exact parallax point, but ultimately you can get it. So really the way we're building this is just designed for one lens. Now if you were to go to another lens, most likely it's not going to be the same point. If it is, rejoice, that's great, but you can just make another bracket. So you can make a bracket for each lens. So again, I'm going to show you that link, how to do that, how to find that parallax point, but I was able to do it. You can rig something up where you can strap your camera, maybe with zip ties or some type of straps, but I was able to do that basically just by holding it and running those tests by turning the camera, the pivot back and forth like this, and just being really careful looking through. If you're able to achieve that, great, and then you'll be able to mark off your hole. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and drill that out, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I went ahead and found my parallax point and drilled my 1/4 inch hole right here. Okay, now again, this is going to be a 1/4 inch hole because that's the one that the bolt goes for your camera mount's tripod. I should say that if you have the ability to create a slot here, then that's great. That's ultimately how this should operate. The whole point of this video is to show you how to make a bracket that you can do at home with just a drill, because really the only way to create a slot would be with a milling machine, and nobody really has a milling machine handy. So again, the point was just to show you how to do this with a drill press preferably, but you can do it with a hand drill. And I went ahead and cut off the end here and the end, so really just a hand drill and a hacksaw is the only tools you really need to make this, and some patience. So now we're ready to go ahead and mount the camera up. So again, you got your thumb screw, and this is a 1/4 inch. So we're going to stick that through. You go ahead and put your proper spacers on that you had before. I'm going to put this one on the inside. Got my plate here, and again, you'll have to figure out what some type of plate or some type of spacer. Basically, because if it was lying flat against this, it would be hitting the end of this bolt here, the head, the end of the lens. So you got to create some type of gap there. So now we're ready to mount the camera, and you have to make this nice and tight because you can't have this part rotating while you're shooting. Okay, so the camera's tight, looks pretty level, and for the most part, that's really it. Now, you see it up, or it rotates nicely, pivots nicely. This can go straight up or straight down. So it's got a lot of clearance. It's super strong because it's thick metal. So that's pretty much a panoramic head right there, made for under $15. Once you get everything tightened up, you're going to keep it level. Now obviously there's no tick marks down here, so you're going to be shooting manually. So basically you'll be looking through the frame, shooting, rotating. Good overlap is about 20%. So if there's a way you can create tick marks down here to show your degrees, that would be nice. But again, it's not really necessary. Just look through the viewfinder and overlap. Okay, just to finally recap things, the mount is pretty much done, and what's nice about the quick release head is you can kind of just, it's almost like a bracket, and you know, sometimes I just put it in my bag like this. Always put your lens cap on these fisheyes especially, or you can take it apart. Pretty easy to take apart, really. All you do is unscrew that and your whole bracket's there. But again, just make sure when you're shooting to put your bubble level there. So always make sure that's level, and as long as that's level, everything rotating is going to be level. Now if you have to adjust your tripod legs, okay, just make sure your ball head is level. As long as your ball head is level, your whatever camera tripod head you're using, as long as that's level, it's always going to swivel level. So again, there you go. Panoramic mount, super strong. Swivels all the way up or down. And again, when you do this, when you do get this locked in place, make sure you get your ball head locked in super tight, because you can't have that moving at all as it just did. But once that gets locked in there, get all your adjustments. I should be able to shoot some great panoramas. No need to spend $200–300 on these professional heads. Although it's a great thing to have when you get the money, but if you have a little time and some patience and proper tools, and you can build this panoramic head. Well, thanks for taking time to watch this video. I hope this helped a few people. Thanks again.